When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw frizzy, gray, blonde hair and brown eyes flanked by crow's feet. That aging wasn't the problem, she decided. No, the problem was, and maybe always had been, that she was bored. 40 had come and gone, and she had imagined then that she stood at the edge of a great precipice. Her life was going to change. And in a way, it had. Her son Michael went to college for the first time, and at last she found herself without someone to take care of. But sweet freedom turned out to be just more of the same. She went to the same yoga class, talked about online dating, but, like usual, never actually signed up for it, and celebrated the anniversary of her divorce from Michael's father Larry by treating herself to dinner at the Japanese steakhouse, like she did every year. Her days were an endless cycle of getting up and going to her job as a bank teller, then coming home and ordering takeout in the empty house. She hadn't felt the motivation to cook since Michael moved out. Now, 3 years later, Brenda just couldn't take it anymore. She had to do something or she would simply jump out of her skin. But what? Somehow, online dating didn't seem like it would be enough. And besides, if she got a new boyfriend, she would have to either share or give up her divorce anniversary. And where was the fun in that? She was far too interesting to let plastic surgery suffice, and she didn't want to put a hot tub or a pool in the backyard. It would only remind her of the life she had lived in Beverly Hills with Larry before she left when Michael turned 2. So as Brenda swiped the mascara wand through her eyelashes and waxed her upper lip that morning, she pondered every single bucket list item she could think of. Suddenly it hit her. She had always wanted a pet lion. It all started when she and her ex-husband took Michael to see a big cat exhibit when they were visiting her family in South Carolina. The exhibit offered the chance to get your picture taken with a lion cub, and Brenda had begged Larry to do it. Anything for his lady love, he'd said. And so they took a picture, her holding the lion cub, a ball of short, bristly fur, and Larry holding their squalling, squirming son. They hung it on the refrigerator so that they could show it off to their friends. Oh, that's just a picture of the time I got to hold a lion. This, of course, was before Larry lost all their money investing in that stupid indie movie and slept with the C-movie Double D tramp he called his muse. Ever since that day in South Carolina, Brenda had harbored a secret fascination for lions. After she put Michael to bed, she would watch the documentaries on Animal Planet until she fell asleep, drooling with her head on the arm of the sofa. She loved how the lionesses were the ones who did the hunting, but the males' manes were so very regal. Eventually, she began to fantasize about having a lion cub of her own. His name would be Felix, and he would stalk squirrels in the backyard and defend her in the event that Larry ever came back to try to steal Michael away. But she had never thought it would be possible to actually get a lion. And yet, why the hell not? It wasn't like she had any children around the house to worry about. So Brenda looks up lion laws and finds out that she's good to have one in North Carolina. That night, Brenda dreamed about Felix. In the dream, Felix was full-grown, with a magnificent dark mane. She'd read somewhere that lionesses favored breeding with the males whose manes were darkest, so that made her happy. Soon she discovered that she was in fact a lioness, with powerful paws and a lean, agile body. There were other lionesses too, and they were going on a hunt. She followed them. They crept across the savannah, staying low to the ground as they stalked a young zebra that was dawdling at the rear of the herd. When the right moment arrived, Brenda could feel her muscles clenching, and then she was launching herself through the air. Her claws sank into the zebra's back, and soon it was on the ground. She sank her jaws into its flesh and felt the warm blood running down her jaw. It tasted good. They brought their kill back to the rest of the pride. She walked toward Felix with the zebra's carcass in her mouth, swinging her hips in what she realized was more of a human manner. But she didn't care. She felt sexy and powerful, and when she dropped the carcass at Felix's feet, it was with great pride. Then he mounted her, and she forgot all about the zebra. The next morning was Saturday, and Brenda woke up with an all-new sense of purpose. It was like she had finally received the calling she never got back in high school when all of her Catholic school friends were praying about their vocations. She had drifted into both marriage and bank tellerhood without having made much of a conscious choice. But now she knew. She was supposed to be a lioness. It was what her life was lacking. Since Michael was gone at school, she didn't even have a pride to feed. Her dream had made her realize that she was far from her true potential. So began Brenda's attempts to train herself in the ways of the lioness. At the bank, she scrutinized her customers for signs of weakness, like she was picking prey from a herd of wildebeests, until her manager told her to stop glaring at them. That wouldn't do, since no self-respecting lioness wanted to lose her source of income. The grocery store proved to be more useful for her purposes. Brenda stalked through the produce section, picturing herself with a long, lean lion's body, patting down the aisles and prodding the watermelons to test the firmness of their flesh. In her mind, the suburban mother saw her coming and scattered in fear. She was the top of the food chain. She wanted to place her paws on the self-checkout counter and roar after noticing that she had gotten a particularly good discount that day. In yoga class, she repeated a new mantra to herself. I am a lioness. I am a lioness. I am a lioness. She felt that she had reached deeper levels of peace than ever before. So after this, Brenda goes to a big cat rescue center and starts putting in an application to get a lion. And this is the scene that happens after that. / the end of the story. The rescue center was going to call her. Brenda knew it would happen, but she was tired of waiting. Since Felix wasn't with her yet, she needed to be near lions and breathe in the scent of their musk. So she fired up her aging white Honda Civic, noting that she'd need some kind of van or truck for Felix, and drove the 45 minutes to the State Zoo. Before she entered the park, she got a stranger to take her picture with the elephant sculptures at the entrance to mark the occasion. When she got inside, she parked at the Africa gate and bypassed the elephants, gorillas, and the ever-popular giraffe feeding deck. Brenda was a woman on a mission. As she power walked, she sang softly to herself, "In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight." Even though she knew from Animal Planet that lions actually lived in the grasslands. Soon she arrived at the lion enclosure. First, she read the signs that told her information she already knew from watching TV. Lionesses do the hunting, male lions make them look more intimidating to their enemies, blah, blah, blah. Like a kid who saves the biggest present for last on Christmas morning, she wanted to work her way up to seeing the lions themselves. Finally, she looked up. The first thing she saw was a rock formation that looked like a mini version of Pride Rock from The Lion King. Ridiculous, but the little kids probably loved it. Then she saw the lions. A lioness was lounging in the sun, her eyes closed and her tail flicking lazily in the dirt. To her right was a male lion that looked remarkably like Felix had in her dream. She blushed. But something wasn't right. He wasn't virile and strong like her Felix. Lying there under the tree in a well-worn circle, he was just sleeping, surrounded by buzzing flies and clouds of dust. His mane was matted and he looked almost fat. It seemed that his life in captivity had made him lazy. The more she looked at him, the more he reminded her of Larry, snoring out by the pool. Disappointment hit her like a Mack truck. This was all wrong. Felix was supposed to be magnificent, regal, splendid. He was not supposed to look like her ex-husband with his stupid way of smirking even in his sleep and his too many PBR's beer gut. Brenda walked away from the lions then. She tried going into the gift shops in the Africa Pavilion, but the cheap stuffed Felixes with their garish price tags only made her feel worse. Even though it wasn't even noon yet, she bought a hot dog from a concession stand and smeared it with ketchup. The ketchup reminded her of the zebra's blood, so she ended up throwing it away. In the end, she started walking and kept going until she had reached the no-man's land between North America and Africa. There she sat down on a bench on the boardwalk and stared into the water below, thinking that she might as well stay a while. After all, her life couldn't possibly get any more ordinary. She was glad she hadn't told anyone about her plan to buy Felix. Michael would have ridiculed her, and her coworkers would have started taking their lunch breaks somewhere else just to avoid her. And at least she hadn't put the house on the market yet. She sat there all afternoon, the mantra on an endless loop in her head. I am a lioness. I am a lioness. I am a lioness. But she knew she wasn't. So that's that story. I'm Hayley, by the way. I didn't introduce myself at the beginning to go into my lion story. Okay, and this next piece is called Surrender Your Duty. Your Honor, with all due respect, my ex-boyfriend is a scumbag. We met on a Thursday evening in July. I had just had a long day at the office, 3 different root canals, so I went to the bookstore. It was the Last Word, that independent bookshop that used to be in the Greenwood Shopping Center. I was browsing through the paranormal pirate romance section when Roger accidentally bumped into me. I'm not going to say it was love at first sight, but there was definitely some lust there. He was gorgeous. Scruffy face, chocolate eyes, nice white teeth, the whole 9 yards. And do you know what he said to me? He said in his deep and manly voice, "I'm sorry for running into you." What a line! Oh, don't worry about it, I said. So do you read a lot of paranormal pirate romance? No, I have to admit I don't know a lot about it, he said. I was just passing through this section on my way to the magazines. But how about we get a cup of coffee and you can tell me about it? I thought it was very sweet of him to pretend like he hadn't bumped into me on purpose to give him an excuse to talk to me. So we had our first date right there in the Last Word at the coffee bar. When I told him I was a dentist, he told me he'd been having some trouble with his molars. So I had him call the office and leave a message for the receptionist. She found him an appointment slot a couple of months out. The day after our date, I called him to ask how his teeth were doing, and he invited me to things escalated quickly. We went from bowling to dinner dates to reenacting scenes from my favorite paranormal pirate romance, Surrender Your Booty. I'll have you know, Roger makes a very dashing vampire captain. He's easily the best lover I've ever had, and that's saying something. We spent time together constantly. I had 5 square inches to myself on his bathroom counter. He knew the combination to my burglar alarm. You know, I thought we were really going somewhere. I had even told my mother to tell her about Roger. She always told me I needed to marry a good Jewish doctor who would buy me nice jewelry. Never mind that I became a dentist and can buy myself anything I damn well please. After I told my mom about how wonderful Roger was, even though he isn't Jewish or a doctor, she told me, Angie, you really had a shot at marrying this guy. And that's exactly what I thought. I started giving Roger subtle clues that I wouldn't mind being engaged. I left magazines open to show Tiffany ads and made sure to make comments about how all my friends are married. But he just didn't seem to be picking up on my hints. In fact, he seemed more distant than ever. I tried everything to save our relationship. I cooked his favorite foods, I made a whole CD of myself singing his favorite karaoke tracks, and I even had some intimate photos taken of myself to commemorate our 9-week anniversary. But Roger suddenly stopped returning my calls. Whenever I drove by his house, the lights were always out, even when his car was clearly in the driveway. At first I thought, maybe he just needed some space, so I waited. And while I was waiting, the week of his dental appointment arrived. Finally, I was going to have the chance to ask him why he was avoiding me. But when I arrived at the examination room, my staff had already prepped him for the procedure. I was just about to begin the operation when his phone buzzed in the holster at his side. Of course, I was curious, so I sent the hygienist on an errand to get more gauze, and I took a look. Some woman named Cynthia was texting him. Let me know how your dentist appointment goes. Love you, babe. I didn't know who the hell Cynthia was, but it was obvious to me that she was a trashy, uneducated whore. She probably thought Pirates of the Caribbean qualified as paranormal pirate romance. In fact, she probably didn't even read books, which would explain her terrible spelling. Looking down at Roger's dumb face, I knew what I had to do. I locked the door, administered a heavy dose of anesthetic, and I started working. The bastard had it coming. He'd probably been involved with Cynthia all along. Was he using me to escape a loveless marriage? Or worse, what if he wasn't married and just didn't consider me special enough for us to be exclusive? I knew we hadn't exactly talked about it, but come on. The counter space, the burglar alarm, everything added up. We were soulmates. Obviously, he deserved a punishment fitting his crime. So yes, I ground all of his teeth down to nubs. But at least I gave him some extra toothpaste in his freebie bag. When he woke up, of course I didn't tell him what I'd done. I just told him that his mouth would be a little numb for a while and that he would need to go see a specialist. All of which was perfectly true. So, although Roger here might be suing me for medical malpractice, I maintain that I did what was necessary. In fact, I should be suing Roger for fraud or breach of contract or something. Like I said, he's a scumbag and he doesn't deserve the privilege of having teeth. I rest my case.